Social, indigenous, and peasant organizations in Ecuador remain mobilized after 17 days of national strike and reiterate their call to the government to return to the dialogue with guarantees. Colombia's first elected leftist president, Gustavo Petro, met privately with the former conservative president Alvaro Uribe in Bogotá. The purpose is to advance in the construction of a national dialogue, one of the main pillars of his government program. And the Russian President Vladimir Putin assured that he will apply the principle of reciprocity if NATO deploys its forces in Sweden and Finland. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Social, indigenous, and farmers organizations in Ecuador remain mobilized after 18 days of national strike and reiterate the call to the government to return to the dialogue with guarantees. During the 18th day of demonstrations, delegations from all over the country reaffirmed that they will remain firm in the city of Quito in rejection to the policies of Guillermo Lazo's government. In other localities, multiple cases of police repression were reported in the midst of the demonstrations. More organizations continue to join the national strike called by several indigenous and social movements. The organizations involved reiterated their call to the government to resume the dialogue for the benefit of the citizens. Uruguay's National Construction Union announced a 4-hour nationwide strike to demand more government investment in infrastructure. Demonstrators gathered at the terrace of the Montevideo City Hall and marched towards the Ministry of Economy and Finance located along Colonia Street. For this strike, the National Construction Union presented 4 essential demands discussed and drafted by construction workers throughout the country. These issues are work, housing, social security, and collective negotiations. After the mobilization, protesters held a rally outside the Ministry of Economy and the Finance headquarters. The president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, visited the leader of the indigenous movement, Milagro Sala, hospitalized due to a deep vein thrombosis. In declarations to local media after his arrival in the province of Jujuy, the head of state ratified his commitment to the social leader, at the same time that he described the judicial process against the social leader as a political persecution. Likewise, Fernandez called on the courts of the province and the Supreme Court to correct the mistakes committed in relation to Sala's legal situation. Also, the president pointed out that the reason for his visit to the region of Tucumán is to ratify his commitment with the human rights as the basis of the rule of law.
We're governed by the rule of law, and in the rule of law, justice must function differently from what I feel it works at this moment. I ask the judges of Jujuy to please leave aside theories and doctrines that were spread during the years of the previous government and that definitely contradict the essence of the rule of law.
The Argentinian president, during his press conference, indicated that the indigenous leader is in the process of recovering.
What is happening to Milagro is not made up. The doctors, the sanitarium, gave me the report that says that she has a thrombosis, that she has a deep venous thrombosis in the left inferior member. And that is not a minor matter. It is a serious matter. Thanks God, the doctors say that her evolution is good, that she would require more time in the sanatorium, more time to rest, and that, well, she will follow the corresponding medical treatment.
And we have more information on the region. A gang confrontation in Haiti left around 200 people dead. In a human rights report, the National Defense Network stated that 191 people were killed, including 107 men, 76 women, 6 girls, and 2 boys, while at least 18 women were raped and later executed. The report also denounced the silence of the authorities about the massacre in the plain of Cul-de-Sac north of Port-au-Prince. In this regard, international media report that the gangs, such as those of Chen Michan and the 400 Mawozo, operate on the outskirts of the capital and have even tried to isolate the territory.
Los misioneros de una organización religiosa y sus familiares volvían de visitar un orfanato situado a unos 3 de abril 10
In the United States, the death toll of migrants exposed to high temperatures and cramped inside a truck in San Antonio, Texas, rises to 53. The commissioner of the National Migration Institute, Francisco Garduño, informed that the vehicle was captured by security cameras on 27th of June, parked 235 kilometers from the border with Mexico. According to a U.S. immigration agency, 3 people have been detained as suspects of human trafficking and homicides, including the driver who passed himself off as a migrant. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Colombia's first elected leftist president, Gustavo Petro, met privately on Wednesday with former conservative president Alvaro Uribe in Bogotá. The meeting took place in the office of lawyer Héctor Carvajal. The president-elect attended with the head of the debate, Alfonso Prada, while former President Uribe was accompanied by the director of the Democratic Center, Nubia Stella Martinez, the former presidential candidate, Alirio Barrera, the Senator Ciro Ramirez, and the House Representative Juan Fernando Espinal. At a news conference following the meeting, Uribe said he discussed several topics with Petro, including taxation, poverty, equality, and the country's diplomatic relations with Venezuela. Petro has vowed to normalize relations with neighboring Venezuela after they were broken in 2019. Both parties agreed to keep a permanent dialogue. Colombian Senator Iván Cepeda referred on his Twitter account about the meeting between President-elect Gustavo Petro and the former President Alvaro Uribe. The senator commented that this image represents what we want to see happening in Colombian political life in the new era that began on June 19th. Dialogue as the way to solve the problems, find paths to peace, and deepen democracy more and more. Now we address other topics. The Nicaraguan government is anticipating the arrival of a potential tropical cyclone and began the preparations for a possible impact on the East Coast. According to the Vice President, Rosario Murillo, the authorities of the National System for the Prevention, Mitigation and Attention of Disasters are attentive to the meteorological event, at the same time that they are preparing to prevent the greatest number of damages. If the projections of the U.S. National Hurricane Center are maintained, a cyclone could be forming next Friday in front of the Nicaraguan coasts. Thousands of people took to the streets of Madrid in Spain to protest against the NATO summit, which is being held in the city. 2 protests were called by the social movements during the days of the summit, but they were banned by the authorities. More than 10,000 agents are deployed in the area where the multilateral meeting is taking place in order to ensure the security of the event and avoid any protest. Citizens have shown their rejection to the agreements signed by Madrid and the transatlantic organization that plan to increase military spending in the country by 2%. The leaders of the 5 states bordering the Caspian Sea met in Turkmenistan's capital Ashgabat for the 6th Caspian Summit. Established by Iran, Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan, the summit is a platform to discuss the implementation and the development of the Caspian Sea resources. As part of the Caspian Summit, the participating countries agreed that military forces of other states may not enter the Caspian Sea. In this regard, the leaders spoke in favor of an agreement that includes confidence-building measures on military activities and establishes the rule governing regional cooperation in this field. During his speech at the summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin called for the promotion of political, trade, energy, transport, and security cooperation. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin assured that he will apply the principle of reciprocity if NATO deploys its forces in Sweden and Finland. Putin stated that he has no issues with the accession of these nations to the bloc, since Russia has no territorial disputes with them. However, the president warned that the governments of both northern countries must understand that in the case of deployment of troops and the military infrastructure in their territories, Moscow will be forced to respond in a similar way. Putin sentenced that Moscow considers NATO as a political tool of the United States. The Russian government rejected NATO's stance that described the Eurasian nation as a threat to the member countries of the bloc and its allies. Russian Foreign Ministry and authorities assured that the strategic policy of the Atlantic Alliance is destroying what remains of the European architecture. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov emphasized that Moscow will do everything possible to guarantee its own security and that of its allies under any circumstances. This comes after NATO member countries adopted the so-called Madrid strategic concept during the recent NATO summit held in the Spanish capital, where Russia and China are defined as fundamental threats to transatlantic security. Syria decided to recognize the independence of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. Taking into account the common will and desire to establish relations in all fields, the Syrian Arab Republic has decided to recognize the independence and sovereignty of the Lugansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic, announced the Syrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates. The Chancellery informed that the communication will be established with each of these two countries to agree on frameworks for strengthening relations, as well as the establishment of diplomatic relations in accordance with the established norms. In Russia, a total of 70 foreign organizations from 12 countries connected to the Russian financial messaging system, the SPFS, similar to SWIFT. The head of the Russian Central Bank invited foreign market participants to join the SPFS institution, which became fully operational in 2017, which so far has at least 17 banking entities from several countries, but their names are being withheld to avoid possible Western sanctions in retaliation for trade transactions with Russia. This system was created in response to the probability, already a reality, of excluding Russian banks from the SWIFT network, which covers more than 11,000 large organizations from almost every country in the world. In Qatar, talks begin with the aim of reactivating the nuclear agreement. At the same time, Iran is considering reaching a possible agreement with the U.S. The Iranian government affirmed that it is possible to reach an agreement with Washington, but warned that it will not give in on its red lines during the indirect negotiation in Doha. The first round of joint talks for the lifting of sanctions between Iran's chief negotiator Ali Bagheri Kani and the European Union coordinator Enrique Mora was held in the Qatari capital with an agenda that promotes the revival of negotiations unilaterally abandoned by the former U.S. President Donald Trump in May 2018. Israeli lawmakers unanimously approved a bill to dissolve the parliament that pushes the country closer towards its fifth election in less than 4 years. Members of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's outgoing coalition and the opposition led by the former Premier Benjamin Netanyahu clash in the Israeli parliament since last week over a dissolution bill. The opposition's readiness to dissolve the parliament suggested Netanyahu's efforts to form a new government had stalled. According to the bill, Parliament will dissolve, with new elections to be held on October 25th or on November 1st, with the date to be set after further negotiations. Lebanon lawmakers designated incumbent Prime Minister Najib Mikati to form a new government on Thursday, more than a month after parliamentary elections that yield no clear majority. The 66-year-old billionaire, who had been widely expected to keep his job, secured 54 votes during parliamentary consultations, giving him a clear edge over other potential nominees. Analysts said that forming the new government will take weeks, if not months, despite the economic emergency facing the country. Lebanon defaulted on its own debt in 2020. The local currency has lost around 90% of its value on the black market, and the UN now considers 4 in 5 Lebanese to be poor. And off the coast with Senegal, a boat carrying more than 100 migrants caught fire, causing the death of 14 people. The tragedy occurred off the town of Kafountine. According to the investigations, the accident was caused by the carelessness of a smoker in the area where the ship's fuel was being stored. So far, the Senegalese Coast Guard has rescued more than 90 people from the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Some of them were transported to hospitals to treat burns that suffered in the catastrophe. In this regard, the authorities assured that they will open an investigation to find out the identity of the organizers of the trip, who were transporting African immigrants and also from other parts of the world to the European coasts. And TeleSUR expands its signal with new satellite parameters. Since more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other farther away nations. These parameters are in place since June 1st in Latin America and the Caribbean, both in English and Spanish, and quite soon further changes will be implemented for the signals in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. So we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.